Welcome to episode 199 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman coming to you on Monday night, a little bit late for the start of this week. I guess I did take off a little bit for the bye week in terms of podcasts, not the site itself. I've been having content come out on a regular basis. We had a lot of interviews last week, ending with Mike Teal last Thursday, and was hoping to get a mailbag out on Friday. It didn't happen. Didn't get a lot of feedback, and also just life kind of happened. Halloween weekend, obviously, with two kids, is pretty busy. Had a trunk or treat, and tomorrow's the big day, meaning Tuesday for Halloween. So catching up now, but I did want to cover a lot of things on this episode. In terms of where Rutgers is right now, it just feels like this is at a kind of a very key moment in time for the athletic department as a whole, with so many different sports. Opportunity is ripe. 2 years ago, Rutgers made a huge step in the Directors Cup standings, Big Ten championships for the first time. Uh, there was 6 teams went to the NCAA tournament. It was a landmark year for the athletic department, and then last year obviously was a pretty big step back, both in teams going to the NCAA tournament. In terms of the way they competed in the Big Ten overall, just it was a down year, right? But I never thought that it was a downward trend long term. And sometimes you have to get knocked back after you make a step forward to then pick yourself back up, regroup, and get better. And I think we're seeing that right now with a lot of programs that some aren't even having their best years, and then some teams are about to start, but it all feels like forward progress in different ways. So let's start with Rutgers women's soccer. There seems to be a little bit of it's great that they get as much buzz among fans as they do. They deserve it. They've made 11 straight NCAA tournaments. They've been the most successful Rutgers program consistently over the last decade. And yeah, they haven't had their type of year. They just were eliminated from the Big Ten quarterfinals on Sunday. It was a draw, so it's important to understand that it was not a loss. It was a scoreless draw through 2 overtimes. They went to a shootout. They did lose the shootout, so Wisconsin advances. They were the 3 seed, Rutgers the 6 seed, 4-1 shootout win, but it was a scoreless game. Now Wisconsin dominated play. They dominated shots 29-8. This Rutgers team, offensively is struggling, but they made a few key saves down the stretch and they gutted it out, and they got a key draw against the number 20 team in the RPI rankings. Rutgers was number 34 coming in, and they're number 34 as of right now. And if every sport's a little bit different, but women's soccer, the field for the NCAA tournament is 64 teams. So that means over 30 at-large berths. And Rutgers is right in line. Even though they've had, a disappointing season for them by their standards, they have won. They've gone 4-1-1 in their last 6 games, 5-2-2 in their last 9. And Olivia Bodmer, their freshman goalkeeper, has been fantastic. Emily Mason's rounding to form. Offensively, you're seeing Ashley Barron, a freshman. Riley Tiernan, we know, is Riley Tiernan and Emily Mason both made second team All Big Ten. There's a lot of talent on this team. Sarah Broches, Becky Fluchel, they've all made some big contributions of late. There's no reason to give up on this team. And they are projected in as of now. Chris Henderson, who pretty much is the kind of authority on women's soccer bracketology, has them as the number 7 at-large team right now. And as I said, close to 30 teams make it. So they're in pretty good shape. Now, they're not going to get a home game most likely. It could get an 8-9 game, which means if you do win, you play the 1 seed in the second round. So it's not a bed of roses by any means. But if the best program at Rutgers, a down year, is making the NCAA tournament for a 12th straight year, and hopefully potentially winning a game in the NCAA tournament, that's a good down year. And yes, some evaluations have to happen. Some, certainly the program has some evaluations to do and just kind of assessments in terms of where they're headed. But there's a ton of talent in this program. It's a really good coaching staff. You're not going to have your best year every year. Fundamentally, yeah, they need, I think offensively, they need to look at things. But Rutgers women's soccer very much firmly alive for their 12th consecutive NCAA tournament bid. We'll find out next Monday the 6th with the NCAA tournament selection show. But I would say as of now, it looks like they're in. Obviously, conference tournaments, you don't want a lot of crazy stuff to happen. Okay, men's soccer. That has been a disappointing year so far. They're 5-7, 5-7-1. Uh, they ended the regular season in seventh place. They earned the seventh seed in the men's soccer Big Ten tournament. They are playing Penn State next week. Excuse me, Friday, who they beat recently. Believe it or not, 2-1. Penn State is the 2 seed, but Rutgers beat them 2-1 at Yersack. They're going to be playing this game at State College. This is on November 3rd. So this is Friday. It's the later game, time DBA, but it's game 4, so I assume it's the last game of the day. But they've been up and down. They had some bad non-conference performances. Right off the start, they lost to Delaware. They tied St. John's. Those were 2 games that you kind of. I mean, you reverse those outcomes, and you're right at 500 there. So um, it's obviously hasn't been what a lot of fans hoped it would be after winning the Big Ten tournament title last year. They do have a lot of faces back. They have some newcomers as well. Uh, there's a lot of talent on this team. It just hasn't gelled the way I think they thought it would. But they have a chance here to make a run in the Big Ten tournament. But I also think if they do, exit, if they don't make a run in the Big Ten tournament, they're obviously not going to make the NCAA tournament. A step back does not mean the program is in decline. Jim McElderry is a fantastic coach. I think he might have to readjust his approach in certain things, maybe with recruiting. Obviously, club soccer is huge these days, but maybe he looks at the mix of players and uh, comes up with some type of assessment on maybe some changes in terms of how he's roster building. I don't know. All I'm saying is it's an opportunity for them to get better. And with the Pac 12 coming in, some powerhouses, UCLA, Washington, perhaps a reevaluation that sets the program on a little bit of a different approach moving forward could be a blessing in the long run. Field hockey started 15-0, was up to number 3, lost that absolute heartbreaker to Northwestern the weekend before. There's a lot of talk about it. I wrote about it. They lost the shootout. They had scored what was the apparent winning goal, and it was disallowed due to time. They did not beat the shot clock. Wasn't well explained during the telecast, and ultimately Northwestern won. On BTM Plus, they said Rutgers have won the Big Ten. It was heartbreaking. So they went out to Iowa, who's a top 10 team as well, and they it was 2-1 in the third period. They ended up losing 7-2. Obviously, Rutgers was already assured the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So I really throw that one out the window because I think it was a total emotional letdown, and they got it out of their system. And now the postseason begins. They're the number 2 seed, and they are going to be hosting. They're the whole Big Ten tournament for field hockey is in Ann Arbor at Michigan. Rutgers field hockey, the number 2 seed playing the number 7 seed Michigan, who they beat in overtime this year. And then they play the winner of Iowa, who's actually the 6th seed, but top 10 in the country. That's how good this league is. And then Maryland, who Rutgers beat. So want to see them get off to Schneid there and knock off Michigan, and then I think that kind of resets things. The bottom line is this team has a ton of talent. That loss to Northwestern. They were national finalists last year. Rutgers has beat Northwestern 4 to the last 7. This team has national title capabilities. They just have to get back on their winning ways and get their confidence back. But this team can make a real run. Final Four. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited to see what they can do. Meredith Civico, just what she's done over the years for the program has been amazing. And I think that this is going to be a great postseason for that program. Volleyball got a huge win on Friday in defeating Iowa on the road. Iowa was in last place, winless going into it. Rutgers was down 2-1. They won the last 2 sets. Then they played number 1 Nebraska on Sunday, and they took them in the first set. Nebraska is a powerhouse, and Rutgers only lost the first set 25-22. So that's something for a team like this, for a program like this. That last week, the week before, they lost to Illinois in 5 sets. Then they come back to beat Iowa in 5 sets, and then they take the number 1 team in the country to 25-22. Now, Nebraska pulled away in the last two sets. It was 25-15, and the third set wasn't particularly close either. And they are going to host Nebraska at the RAC next weekend. So we'll see what happens there. But this is a program that's taking steps forward. They now have two Big Ten wins. Caitlin Schweihofer's team taking a step forward. Really positive to see. Let's, in the middle of this now, covering all these teams, football. So coming off the bye week, their stock went up. Their stock went up with the results that happened. I wrote about this as well over the weekend a few days ago, just in terms of Virginia Tech beating Syracuse, demolishing Syracuse. You had Northwestern beating Maryland. You had Indiana almost pulling off a shocker in Happy Valley against Penn State. It was tied with 2.5 minutes to go. Um, it's it's really encouraging. It's encouraging for this team now. Now, how they respond without Tyrone Powell on defense now. Can Gavin Wimsatt take another step forward? Can Kyle Monangai continue to do what he's doing, on pace to be the first running back for 1,000+ yards in 10 years? Jawan Jameson the last. Does Sam Brown or Avery Young maybe make more of an impact down the stretch as you're facing these great defensive teams, starting with Ohio State on Saturday? Ohio State is a little bit banged up. It's going to be interesting to see. I wrote about all the storylines today. There's a lot. It's pretty juicy. But there's hope that, Rutgers can have their most competitive game against Ohio State since the series began when they joined the Big Ten. And that's saying something. So can they capture the moment? Can they get out of November with at least one more win? Iowa firing, essentially pushing out Brian Ferentz as offensive coordinator. So that game's in 2 weeks. We know that, that's a game they should absolutely have a chance to win. Then you go to Penn State, which, maybe doesn't look as daunting against Indiana. But you know what? I'll say this. I was going to save it for that week, but Penn State fans will never admit this. James Franklin will never admit this. The team will never admit this. But Penn State gets up for Rutgers. And uh, I think other teams get up for Rutgers. I mean, Michigan gets up for Rutgers. We know, aside from the sign stealing, they get up for Rutgers. I mean, Harbaugh just went on and on about this team. They've played them close after the last few years, but Penn State absolutely gets up for Rutgers, and it's going to be a very difficult game. But I'm really curious to see how Rutgers holds up in the trenches. They haven't held up well the last few years. And then you have Maryland at home now. That's looking much more manageable. Certainly never an easy game, but that's pretty close to being a 50-50 game. And who knows what the health of either team will be at that point. Mike Loxley's team typically is, as they're what top 20 in top 25 in September, and then they just kind of fall apart. Rutgers could be getting them at the exact right time at the end of the season. We'll see what happens there. But yes, it's not crazy to think they're going to get one win in November, possibly two. Who knows? But 8-4 is absolutely a real possibility. And then you have that bowl game. If they went 8-4, I think they have a real shot at the Music City Bowl in Nashville on December 30th. That would be against an SEC team. Someone, I forget who, projected them today to go to that bowl and play Tennessee. That would be pretty incredible, just in terms of the Greg Schiano soap opera that happened at Tennessee. I don't like that matchup on paper, but it sure would be heck fun to write about. But football is at the point where they're playing with house money, but they have a real chance now to make an even bigger impression, to improve perception even more, to take a step forward as a program. Really kind of accelerating a step I don't think any of us really expected this year. And it's all on the table for them. So exciting times for football. And then just talking about the winter sports that are coming. Wrestling, starts this weekend. And I think, it's a much improved roster. It's a deeper team. They're at, let's see, they're in California. They're going to be in San Luis Obispo, California, Cal Poly and Duke. They have a tri meet on Friday, November 3rd. So wrestling, had a lot in the transfer portal. They have all 10 weight classes ranked. They have, it's 12 or 13 wrestlers that have gone to nationals before. 4 ranked in the top 12 right now. Dean Peterson at 125. And then the back end of the lineup is just, I can't say it's been as good as it ever has since being in the Big Ten. I'm not the right expert to say that. I'm gonna have Eric Vesper on soon, our wrestling guy, to talk about it. But You have Brian Sedano back at 184. He's ranked 10th in the preseason. John Pasnatsky is back. He moved up a weight class, 197. He's at number 12. And then you have Yaroslav Slavakowski, the transfer from Harvard, who's ranked number 6 at heavyweight. I mean, that's three really, really good, skilled, tough wrestlers at the back of your lineup. Rutgers hasn't been very traditionally heavy at the back end. They've always been typically more in the front. So you have Dylan Schwarber back. You have the transfers from Oklahoma, Mitch Moore and Jacob Butler in the middle. Jackson Turley is back. There's a lot of talent on this team, and I think that they took a step back last year. They're ranked 14th in the preseason this year, and I think Goodell has done a really good job of rebuilding the roster. And I think it's going to be a really hungry team. And I think Rutgers Wrestling is going to have a really fun season. I'm excited for it. You have women's basketball. Cole Crease Washington into her second year. Destiny Adams and Mia Petticourt. She was from Texas A&M, former 4-star. She's the point guard. Destiny Adams, I had her on the pod about, I don't know, maybe a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. It all blends together. I can't remember. I'm getting old. They have a lot more talent that, just with those two players, former high-end recruits. Then you have Kayleen Schmeichel back, who was second team All Big Ten last year, big time scorer for them. China Cornwell is back. You have 7 key players back from last year. They're still short in terms of scholarship players. They have a really difficult schedule. They have Virginia Tech. You have Auburn and Seton Hall in the first week of the season. Next week, you have Virginia Tech soon after that, who went to the Final Four last year. You got to love Cole Crease Washington challenging this team. But I think a winning record is a realistic goal. I think it's certainly not going to be easy, but this team's going to be better. They're going to be more competitive. And it's all about building blocks and talking about the moment right now that I feel like Rutgers is in as an athletic department. This is what I mean in terms of women's basketball. I feel like this is the type of team, the roster, the way it's constructed, the stepping stones they have, the schedule that they're challenging themselves with. I think in a couple years, we're going to look back and say this program took a step forward in year 2 because of X, Y, and Z. In terms of men's basketball, that's kind of the last team. Well, I you know what? I skipped baseball, and I didn't mean to. But baseball is another one that had a big weekend recently. Fall ball, they played Vanderbilt, who was the SEC tournament champions. They finished second in the regular season. SEC power, and Rutgers beat them 16-6 in 18 innings. They got 22 strikeouts from their pitching staff. Really encouraging results. Yes, it's fall. Yes, it's doesn't count. But 16-6, I had to read that again. In 18 innings, they also beat Stony Brook 6-5 over 15 innings this weekend. But they had a freshman, Zach Konstanovsky, who was dominant in 3 innings. They picked up a couple of transfer pitchers, Jordan DiChiaro and Jordan Falco, who pitched really well. You have Christian Coppola back, who pitched for Team USA. He was all Big Ten freshman last year as their ace, emerging for Steve Owens. Tony Santamaria is healthy and back. Trevor Cohen, it looks like he's emerging. You have Josh Kuroda-Grauer. There's a lot of talent on this team, too, for a winning baseball program the last few years that didn't take the step forward we hoped they would last year, but I think they will this coming spring. And then I am going to end up with men's basketball because I think that in terms of this team, it's so interesting because their style is so different. The roster is built so different from years past. The leadership is different. Everything is different. However, everything's the same because of Steve Peichel in terms of the ethos of the program, the culture, the identity. This team is being picked 9th or 10th, but basically everybody. There's some 8th mixed in there. But the national guys, they don't know, and they all piggyback and copy off each other. It's like, oh, he picked them 9th, we'll pick him 9th too, or picked him 10th, we'll pick him 10th. It's just it's lazy. And listen, men's basketball, it's not going to be a straight line up, right? This team has some things they have to, and I wrote about the wings today. The wings are unproven. I think there's a lot of talent there. Obviously, Gavin Griffiths. I really like Antonio Chol. You have Andre Hyatt, who's very versatile. And then, of course, Oscar Palmquist. But there's not a lot of proven production there. So this team is going to get better. I think the way this team is in November, and how they are in late February is going to be different. I think they're going to be better as the year goes on. And I think obviously avoiding landmines in the non-conference is huge, to put yourself in a position to make the postseason in February and really finish the season strong. The Big Ten is going to be good. It's not going to be great. It's going to be wide open. And I think the style in which Rutgers is going to play, they're going to get used to that. But my point in terms of kind of the moment for this program is that there's a real transition going on, both in recruiting, both in how they're going to play as a program. Of course, Steve Pikiell's talked about the defense and the way they played half court defense in the perimeter to come back against St. John's down 20 in the second half. And by the way, the St. John's, yeah, they lost to pace in an exhibition. Joel Soriano, their best player, did not play. Jordan Dingle didn't play. The guy Taylor, that absolute Glenn Taylor, who destroyed Rutgers the week before, played 9 minutes. Patino did not play that game the way he normally would play it. So don't overread into exhibitions and scrimmages and all that stuff. The games are going to count for real next week. Rutgers plays Princeton at Trenton. I'm going to be there. Super, super excited for that. But my point is, I think it's going to be a really fun team. And I think no matter what their final result is, no matter what their record is, this is ushering in a change in the trajectory of the program in terms of how they play, how they're building the roster talent wise. And it's a seminal moment in Steve Pikiell's tenure. I truly believe that. Before it even happens, I think it's going to be. And that's really exciting. And I think expectations have to be held in check. But yes, I think this team's going to have a winning record. And yes, I think they have certainly enough to get back to the NCAA tournament. And I'm going to have plenty of preview coverage the rest of the week. Jerry Carino is going to be on later this week too. But I just think in terms of, you look at men's basketball, you look at baseball, you look at wrestling, women's basketball, all those teams are shifting a bit. And maybe they all took, women's basketball didn't take a step back last year, but they all, wrestling, baseball, men's basketball all took steps back last year. And I think they're all positioned to take steps forward this year, both in their actual seasons and the trajectory of their programs long term. Men's soccer, I think, is kind of a step behind in that. I think they're getting their step back right now. And next season, you're going to see some changes that are going to benefit them. And I don't mean any like crazy changes. I just think that they're going to learn from this. They're going to learn from this and figure out what they need to do better to be better. Jim McKeldry is going to figure it out. He's a great coach. Then you have women's soccer. It's a little bit in transition. But again, if it could be a transitional year, you still make the NCAA tournament, hopefully get a win. They still have every opportunity to do that. And then field hockey is really where, of any of the programs, they have a chance to make a real championship run here. So it's exciting. It's exciting time to be a Rutgers fan. I know not everybody's into all the sports, but I wanted to kind of profile all those sports in this episode 199. I can't believe episode 200. Going to get it out on Halloween. Have no idea what it's going to be about. Don't ask me. I try to get that mailbag back together, but I will get it back together soon. But it's just how I flow. Whatever's in my head that day is what the podcast is going to be, and I'll have to get it out early because it's Halloween. I got it home for trick or treating. I'm completely rambling now. I truly appreciate everyone who reads thescarletfaithful.com and who follows the podcast here at the Scarlet Faithful. And Rutgers has a lot going on. Football, huge opportunity this weekend. And really, it's about, yes, it would be beyond our wildest dreams to beat Ohio State. And it's possible. But the way they're positioned for the rest of the month is better than we thought even a week and a half ago. And this team's just got to keep playing together and keep getting better and play within themselves, and I'm really curious to see what the game plan is with Kirk Sherrock on offense this week. You got to go for it at some point. So there's just a lot of positive vibes right now, and I'm excited to go through it with you. Thank you for listening to the Scarlet Faithful podcast or watching once again.